We're going to start a review of factoring, and we'll start this review by factoring out a greatest common factor, or a GCF. So when factoring out a greatest common factor, we'll determine the GCF, and then we'll divide out or factor out the GCF from each of the terms. So for example, 16x to the 6th minus 12x cubed minus 3x squared. So let's figure out the GCF, the greatest common factor. Let's look at the number parts first. 18, 12, 3. The greatest common factor of 18, 12, and 3 is 3. And then all of the terms have x terms. So x is part of the greatest common factor. And then we're looking at the exponents. And we're going to choose the lowest exponent for the greatest common factor. So our greatest common factor is going to be 3x squared. So we're going to factor that out. And now we're going to take all of the original terms and divide it by 3x squared. So if I take 18x to the 6th divided by 3x squared, we have 6x to the 4th. If we take negative 12x cubed divided by 3x squared, we have negative 4x. And if we have negative 3x squared divided by 3x squared, we have negative 1. So we have 3x squared times the quantity 6x to the 4th minus 4x minus 1. Let's look at a second example. 25x squared y cubed plus 15x to the 4th y to the 4th. So let's determine our greatest common factor. If we look at the number terms, we have 25 and 15. The GCF of 25 and 15 is 5. They both have x terms, and the lowest exponent is 2, so 5x squared. They also both have y terms, and the lowest exponent on y is 3. So our greatest common factor is 5x squared y cubed. So now we'll factor that out of both of our terms. So we have 25x squared y cubed divided by 5x squared y cubed. So 25 divided by 5 is 5, and the x squared y cubed cancel out. And we took 15x to the 4th y to the 4th, divided it also by 5x squared y cubed. 15 divided by 5 is 3. X to the 4th divided by x squared was x squared. Y to the 4th divided by y cubed is y. So factoring out the greatest common factor, we have 5x squared y cubed times the quantity 5 plus 3x squared y. Okay, let's look at another method. We're going to look at factoring trinomials, things like ax squared plus bx plus c, where a equals 1. So that means because a is 1, we can just write them as x squared plus bx plus c. Now I often do this by making an x, and at the top of the x I'll write the c term. It's technically a times c, but here a is 1, so we can write just c. And at the bottom of the x I write b. And we're looking for two numbers that multiply to c and add up to b. And those will be our p and q numbers. And then it will factor to x minus p times x minus q. So let's look at an example. We have x squared plus 4x minus 21. So if I draw an x, my c term is negative 21. My b term is 4. I need to find numbers that multiply to negative 21 and add up to 4. So I could have the factor pair 1 times negative 21, but those don't add up to 4. I could also have negative 1 times positive 21, also don't add up to 4. 3 times negative 7, but those are close, but that would add up to negative 4. We want positive 4. And then negative 3 times positive 7. Those do add up to positive 4, so I can fill those in. That's a positive 7. Sorry, it almost looks like 77. So now that factors to x minus 3 times x plus 7. Okay, let's look at a third method. Factoring trinomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is greater than 1. We're only looking for a is greater than 1 because if a were less than 1, we would factor out the negative. So we're only looking for a is greater than 1. And we would always factor out a greatest common factor first if possible. So for example, 9x squared plus 6x minus 24. So let's look at our terms. I have 9, I have 6, I have negative 24. I do have a GCF here. The GCF is 3, so I can factor 3 out. And I'm left with 3x squared plus 2x minus 8 in parentheses. So now I'm going to look at the part that's in the parentheses. And I'm going to start it like we did on the last method. I'm going to draw an x. And at the top of the x, I'm going to put a times c, the product. And then at the bottom of the x, b. So at the top of the x, I'm going to put 3 times negative 8, which is negative 24. And at the bottom of the x, I'm putting 2. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply to negative 24, but add up to positive 2. So I could have 1 times negative 24, but no, those don't add up to positive 2. Negative 1 times positive 24, but no, those don't add up to positive 2. Okay, let's try 2 and negative 12. No, those don't add to 2. Negative 2 and positive 12. Nope, still don't add to 2. 3 and negative 8. No, they don't add to positive 2. Negative 3, positive 8. Nope, those don't add to positive 2. 4 times negative 6. Okay, we're closer, but those would add to negative 2. We want them to add to positive 2. So what about negative 4 and positive 6? Yes, those work, so I can fill those in. But now I can't go right to the parentheses because I have a number in front of the x squared. So what we're going to do is we are going to expand the trinomial so that it has 4 terms by expanding out the middle using those numbers we just found, the negative 4 and the 6, and then we'll factor by grouping. So I'm going to keep the first, and I'm going to look at the part that was in the parentheses. We'll come back to that 3 we factored out at the end. So I'm going to take the 3x squared, that stays the same, the negative 8, that will stay the same, but instead of the 2x, I'm going to use the negative 4 and the 6 and write negative 4x plus 6x. I could write those in either order. The final result will be the same. And now that I have 4 terms, I'm going to literally split it in half. And now I will look for greatest common factors out of each of the halves. So 3x squared, negative 4x, my greatest common factor is x. When I factor x out of each of the 2 terms, I now have 3x minus 4 in parentheses. And now I'll look at the second pair, and I have 6x and negative 8. My greatest common factor here is, and it's positive for my third term, so that means I'm going to have a positive number for my GCF. So 6 and 8, I'm going to have 2 as my GCF, but again, because my third term was positive, it's going to be a positive 2 as my GCF. So if I factor a 2 out of both of those terms, 6x divided by 2 is 3x. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. You'll notice here I have a common binomial term. If that was not common, we did something wrong. And I'm going to factor that out now. So now that's out in front. I have 3x minus 4. And I will build a second set of parentheses using those 2 factors that I factored out, the x and the plus 2. So those go in that second set of parentheses. And then I will bring that 3 that we originally factored out from before out in front. So my 9x squared plus 6x minus 24 factored to 3 times the quantity 3x minus 4 times the quantity x plus 2.